Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to our special event, our finale for Charity Week. And today we have an interview, a discussion ahead of us with our brother Ayman Yousif, who is a pharmacy student and he is a semi-pro footballer. So we'll be having a discussion with him. The topic of today's discussion is physical activity and Muslim representation. So inshallah we'll hit on quite a few different topics and inshallah there'll be opportunities for a Q&A if anyone has any questions or anything to add to the discussion. So the way that we're going to go about it is that we're going to have some quick fire questions to get us started, to get us into the mood before we get into the deeper questions of the evening.
Okay.
That's okay. But before we start with any of that, I'll just quickly recite Surah Al-Fatiha, and that'll also double as a dua for us to get us started, inshallah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. Ayman, it's great to have you here.
Great to be here. Alhamdulillah.
So we'll get straight into it with some quick fire questions. So we have 22 questions that I want to ask you.
Okay.
22 was intentionally chosen because you're 22 years old.
Okay.
And coincidentally, I'm also 22 years old, so that's nice. We'll get straight into it. Ronaldo or Messi?
Messi.
Why?
Well, for a long time I was on the fence. Like I never really cared. I could appreciate the two, but I think recently I've veered towards Messi because how he interlinks with the play and just that he can do things that no one else can really do with the ball. Ronaldo's very much focused on goal scoring, whereas Messi's creating and goal scoring.
Right, okay. So Ronaldo is all about looks, Messi is about the technical aspects.
I mean, I can appreciate what Ronaldo can do with the ball too, but it's not like he can do what Messi can do, whereas Messi can do what Ronaldo can do and more.
Right. I think what's commonly kind of talked about is that Messi is more gifted as a footballer and Ronaldo perhaps is more of a hard worker.
I'd agree that Messi is more naturally talented, but that's not to say he doesn't work hard too.
Of course, yeah.
But yeah, like I mean, it comes down to how much they train, what they train, but also that God-given talent that I think Messi is just given on another level.
Right. If we were to add a third person to that list, who would it be?
Current footballers? To be honest, I don't think there's any footballer that compares to those two
on that
the
list,
same
yeah.
scale. Yeah, there's not really, like they're on a whole different scale compared
If you
to
had to
everyone
put someone...
I think right now Haaland is coming up there with his goal scoring record. Like there's nothing really seen like that, especially in the Premier League. But he's still young, so he still has a lot to prove. But if he continues on the same trajectory that he's going at the moment, he could put himself up there with those two.
He plays for Dortmund, right?
He just transferred to Man City this year.
Oh yeah.
And I think it's 12 games they've had in the Premier League, and he has 18 goals already. So it's pretty unheard of.
Nice.
Yeah.
Question 2, Jurgen Klopp or Pep Guardiola?
I'm gonna go with Pep.
Right.
I just think what he's done in the different leagues, he's kind of just proven himself in that sense. Just his tactical awareness, any player who's played under him will always say the same. As well, like I think you can appreciate what Klopp has done with Liverpool, but he hasn't really shown that anywhere else.
Mm-hmm. Right. Premier League or La Liga?
The Premier League. I think the Premier League's the best league in the world, the most competitive league in the world. Teams at the bottom beating teams at the top. I mean, Liverpool, who 2 seasons ago, they just won the Premier League 2 seasons ago, and now they've lost to Leeds and Nottingham Forest, who are at the bottom end. So I think the Premier League, for sure.
Right. Club or international football?
Club football. I mean, the international stage is obviously can be a very big stage for most footballers, but you know, the club stage is what most people are used to, and the only real international competitions, the Euros, Copa America, and the World Cup, obviously, are the main ones that people would look forward to.
Right. Okay, this is a good one, if I do say so myself. Arabic or English commentary?
Arabic commentary, 100%. They take it to a whole nother level. I think the English commentary is very boring. Like Arab commentators have no filter.
There's no filter.
Yeah.
And there doesn't have to be anything going on. They're just they're just on cloud 9.
Always, yeah. It's great to see.
It's, one of my roommates last year, he used to have the Champions League or the Premier League on in the kitchen, and whenever I would go in, it's like Abdurrahman, Mohamed Salah,
They always take it to the extremes of football. Yeah, it's great to see though. I think Arabic commentary definitely.
It's so unbelievable.
Yeah.
And there's a real rise of football in the Arab world now, particularly. I don't know too much, but like in Egypt and obviously Qatar and the Gulf. You're from Sudan. How's it like in Sudan as well?
I think in Sudan it's not near the same level as it is in particularly Egypt. I think Mohamed Salah has kind of provided that kind of foundation for the kind of Egyptian community as such, to someone to look up to and someone to follow for the young kids who are aspiring to be footballers. But I don't think in terms of in Sudan that there's been that same presence, or probably not any other Arab country, to be honest, because Mohamed Salah has done so much in terms of representation for his nation that no other country has really managed in terms of Arab countries, I think.
So perhaps it might change if Sudan gets like a famous footballer on the scene.
I think so, yeah. I mean, people kind of need an example to follow, and I think Mohamed Salah in his sense has provided that for Egypt, and I think if other countries were to have that kind of role model, then it would become more prevalent in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, talking about Mohamed Salah, you also have Sadio Mane. Who's also really made a name for himself in Liverpool. So, all right, you're playing a 5-side football match. Say it's Charity Week 2023, the international football tournament.
Okay.
Which other 4 players do you choose? Famous players. So you're one of them.
Current footballers. Messi.
Okay.
Neymar. Thibaut Courtois as goalkeeper.
Okay. Who does he play for?
Real Madrid.
Real Madrid, okay.
Yeah, and then I guess I need a defender, so maybe Antonio Rudiger from Real Madrid as well.
Right.
Just someone who can take no nonsense at the back, win the ball, and give it to the other guys to do the rest.
Right.
Yeah.
What do you think of it? This is a bit of a selfish question, but the defender in Liverpool, the tall fella,
Virgil van Dijk.
Van Dijk.
I think initially he was a bit overrated. Like, I don't rate him as highly as most people would. But then again, I don't like Liverpool, so.
You don't like Liverpool?
I don't like Liverpool, so that probably has something to do with it.
I don't think that's I don't think we can continue with this conversation.
Yeah. So no, I think he's a great defender, but he's not on the same level as most people think he is.
Okay, I think that's a bit better. We can continue. All right. So if you were to have dinner with 3 football personalities who are not current players, you can have managers or other football personalities. Who would they be, and where would you go?
They can be ex-players.
Not players.
No, just
No
managers.
players. Just managers and coaches. And
Zinedine Zidane, Ronaldinho. This will obviously be difficult in terms of how I'm going to communicate with them with the language. But
is he a manager now?
Okay. So Zidane's not a manager now either, but he was.
He was.
And he probably will be again. But okay, Zidane, Pep, and Sir Alex Ferguson. Those are the three, because I think not just in football or in sports, but also in life, like your mentality and how you see things, your perspective really shapes how you put things into practice and how you conduct yourself. So I think with the things they've achieved and how they've achieved them, I'd love to see their perspective and their outlook on life. I think there's a lot to learn from that.
Nice. Okay, if you were to have dinner with three non-football sports personalities, who would they be and where would you go?
Khabib Nurmagomedov.
Right answer.
Do they have to be alive?
No.
Muhammad Ali. And maybe Roger Federer. I think those three. And where would we go? I don't know, probably just a restaurant. I don't know, nowhere in particular.
What kind of food?
Indian food, probably.
Correct answer. I don't think I asked you where would you go for the managers.
The managers to a football dressing room with a tactics board. Yeah.
Okay. Three famous contemporary individuals who have influenced you the most. This isn't necessarily related to football.
Who have influenced me the most?
Yes. Three people who have influenced you the most.
They don't have to be famous people?
Famous people.
Famous people, and they're not footballers?
Not necessarily footballers.
But they can be?
They can be.
I think Sadio Mane is one.
Okay.
Khabib is another. And to be honest, it's a lot of just, those who portray Islam correctly, in my view, in sports. And those two do it very well for me. They kind of set that kind of role model to follow and things you can work on in yourself. And I see that in them two in particular. So,
right. I'll just make another question up for you. Three contemporary individuals who have influenced you, non-sports related.
And do they have to be famous?
Yes. Famous.
Okay. Martin Luther King.
Okay.
Nelson Mandela.
Right.
And I guess Malala Yousafzai. They all provide a very, maybe you'd say different, but broad view of things, important things in life that we should all be, knowledgeable about and recognize the importance of equality.
Right. Interesting answers. Yeah. Okay. Some more personal questions. What's your favourite team?
Manchester United.
Right. Okay. Follow-up question. What on earth is going on with Manchester United?
We're all over the place. We lost to Aston Villa yesterday, and then we beat the top teams like Liverpool, and we beat Arsenal, who are top of the league. But I don't know what's going on with Manchester United right now. But alhamdulillah,
Were you always a Manchester United fan?
always since a child.
Right.
Very much influenced by my brothers since I was young. But yeah, alhamdulillah.
Right. Favorite jersey number?
2.
2. Why?
That's my number.
That's your number.
Yeah.
Right. Home or away?
Home, always.
Always.
Yeah. I think when you play at home, it's a place where no one should come to your place and beat you. You know what I mean? So I think when you're at home, you almost have that feeling of you're in charge. Like, this is my turf.
Right.
So
Right.
I think I like playing at home.
Is it an obvious answer, do you think, for most people?
No, I think a lot of people would vary with their response to the question, but Some people like to go away, and they like the intimidation of the atmosphere and the away fans, and maybe that spurs them on and gives them the motivation to play better. But I think for the most part, when you have the crowd on your side, it's a lot easier to play to your best.
Yeah, right. Do you have a pre-match ritual?
No, not particularly. I mean,
Anything that you do regularly before you go onto the pitch?
one that I've adopted recently is just in the car on the way there, I'd listen to some Quran, but that's about it.
Any reciter in particular?
No, none in particular. I just have this iQuran app on my phone where I just choose whatever I feel like listening to on the day.
Nice, nice. Okay, if football wasn't an option, what sport would you be playing?
I think tennis. When I was younger, I played tennis for quite a while, until I was about 10 or 11. And I really enjoyed tennis, so I think I'd probably go with tennis if I could go back in time.
Right. If not tennis?
If not tennis, I think maybe
Cricket.
not cricket. Never played cricket in my life. Maybe Formula One or something like that.
Really?
Adrenaline rush. Yeah.
It's an interesting one. Yeah, that's an interesting one. Okay. Biggest non-sport related hobby?
It's quite the question. I don't know. I think my life is very much based on sports.
Yeah.
I like to spend time with my family.
A hobby though?
I think everything I do in my life is sports, to be honest. If there's no sports, it's the course I'm in.
If you were injured and you couldn't play sports?
Oh, well, I play PlayStation or something like that.
Okay. What do you play?
Mostly FIFA.
FIFA?
Yeah.
Okay. Very interesting. Okay. I'm not intending to create an existential crisis in you, but Ireland or Sudan?
Sudan.
I think you played the safe answer there.
Yeah, I think it's... I like that answer.
Oh, why so?
I think culturally within me, I feel like even while I was born here in Ireland and I've lived here in Ireland my whole life, like I don't feel Irish, you know what I mean? Culturally, I'm Sudanese. My family's from Sudan. My background is Sudan. When I go home to Sudan, I feel like this is where I want to be. Like this, I prefer this over Ireland. So yeah, I'd say Sudan.
Interesting. Yeah, we'll probably get back to that question later on. Favorite cheat meal?
I like pizza. I'd say pizza, yeah.
Right. Favorite TV show?
Series, like a series.
Series, yeah. If you watch a series.
I don't really watch TV like that, to be honest.
What do you watch on TV or Netflix?
Just whatever's, prominent at the time, like whatever's going around. At the moment, nothing. Yeah.
What's the last TV show you saw?
I watched it was just like 3 episodes, but it was something called You Don't Know Me. It was like a criminal investigation type thing.
Oh, right.
But that's the last thing, yeah.
Okay. Tea or coffee?
Coffee. I just kind of...
Never tea.
I have tea from time to time, but I don't rely on it as much as a lot of people around me in my life would rely on tea. But I think coffee from time to time gives you the boost you need. So, coffee.
Do you drink every day?
No.
Okay. Favorite holiday destination?
That I've been to or that I'd like to go to?
Either.
I guess Dubai. I've been there before. It was very nice. You just see like it's a completely different environment, almost a different life to what we have here. But it's nice to get a different perspective on it. So I'd say that.
Right. Very good. Last question. Something about you that most people don't know.
So now I'm meant to let people know.
Yep.
Okay.
Or something that people would be surprised to know of you.
I guess going back to the whole what I do like outside of sports and playing PlayStation, like when I was 11, I was ranked number 4 in Ireland in FIFA.
Seriously?
Yeah.
There's a competition for FIFA?
Yeah, it's a professional scene. Like people play that, and that people live off it.
How didn't I know about that?
Yeah.
I always think that I'm fantastic at FIFA, but somehow I lose matches.
You'll have to give me a game.
Yeah, for sure, like anytime. Right, okay, that was very interesting. So we'll get into the more discussions related to the subject of physical activity, the importance of physical activity for Muslims, and Muslim representation within sport. So just to start off, can you tell us a bit about your football journey? When did you get started and how did you get to where you are now?
So I started playing football for as long as I can remember. I was very much influenced by my brothers who played football as well. I joined a club in Wexford when I was 5 and called North End United. That's the team I was telling you who wear sky blue. I played with them for 15 years or so, and then I moved to Wexford FC.
Right.
So
And that's a professional.
That's a professional.
That's a professional team.
But I think there's a little gap in there. I think when I was like 17, I stopped playing for the Leaving Cert.
For the Leaving Cert, yes.
And then again, I guess if you're going back to my journey and how I got to where I am, I was very much influenced by my friends and by those around me in my environment to go back into football and back into what I loved. And that kind of got me back onto football. I played at Wexford for 1 year, and then I transferred to Bluebell United here in Dublin, which is semi-professional.
Right.
So that's how my journey's gone.
Nice, very good. What are your future plans with football?
At the moment, I'm very happy, like in the semi-professional scene, particularly in this year where I'm having to manage it with the masters in pharmacy. Like it's quite heavy, so I think it's very much more manageable. So I much prefer like having the comfort. But after this year, you know, I think there is potential to go back into the professional scene, and I guess playing at the semi-professional level, I'm playing every game, I'm getting plenty of game time, I'm developing as a player, and I think like that's the beauty of the game. Like you never know what's around the corner. So.
Right. What team would you like to play for in the end?
In the end,
The dream team that you want to play for?
well, Manchester United. I mean,
Manchester United.
that's the team I support. So it would be, I guess, a dream to go and play for them one day.
Nice. Who's your favorite? Just on Manchester United, who's your favorite Man U manager?
Of all time?
Yeah.
Sir Alex Ferguson.
Alex Ferguson.
Yeah, he brought the most success to the club.
Okay, and just finally about your personal journey, what has sports offered you personally that you think things other than sport wouldn't have given you?
I think it varies from like time to time depending on what stage of life you're at. Initially, it offered me friendships, it offered me character building, it offered me a new perspective on handling situations. But I think currently it offers me an outlet from college. It offers me the opportunity to de-stress, to relax, to express myself. And that's not something that I'd get anywhere else.
Right. So I just want to start talking about physical fitness in general. Just in general and more specifically for Muslims, why it's important to be physically fit. Why do you think it's important to be physically fit?
I think firstly and the most important reason would be like, I think we all recognize in Islam the importance of keeping your body in the best possible condition. Our bodies essentially don't belong to us. They're just a resting place for our soul. And we have that obligation to return our bodies to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the best possible state. So I'd say that's the first and most important reason.
Right.
Beyond that, then when you think of it maybe on a smaller scale, we all have the obligation to represent ourselves going around, be it college, be it work, be it whatever your environment is. And people, especially here in the Western world, have an ideology of the Muslim community, things that are portrayed in the media, and we don't want to present that in a bad light. So I think to have a positive appearance would be a good start.
Right, okay, very good. I want to delve in a bit deeper into some of those things that you mentioned. So being physically fit from just a health point of view, it's important.
Yeah.
And what do you think from a physical appearance point of view? I think this is a common misconception that Muslims have, that physical appearance doesn't mean much, that it's only about having good character, it's only about being a good Muslim in terms of the rituals that you're doing and having the correct knowledge. And physical appearance, it doesn't play a massive role in that. But the reality is that if you're someone who looks well physically, if you look impressive physically, whether it's Muslims or non-Muslims, people are going to look up to you, and they're going to be interested in what you have to say. They're going to be interested in hearing from you, and they're going to respect you automatically.
I agree. Yeah.
That if you physically take care of yourself, if you take care of yourself in that fashion, then you demand people's respect in that way. And I think that's something that the Muslim community is lacking in. That we don't really focus on physical appearance that much, although it is very important. What do you think about that?
No, I'd agree with everything you said. Again, maybe it comes back to the idea of providing an example, again, to the younger people. Like, if they have something to look up to and something to maybe strive towards, that's perhaps on us to provide that example for them and to underline that importance of physical appearance. But I definitely agree with everything you just said, yeah.
It's an interesting point you raised a few times, was in relation to being the role model that you want people to have. Like, that's the other issue, that if you're waiting for people to create that role model, like, you can never expect that to happen, or you can never really believe that that's going to happen, especially the way that you want to see that.
Yeah.
The kind of balance that you want between, yes, physical appearance, but if you're looking physically well and if you're looking fine, but your character is just atrocious, well, and that to decide if your Islam isn't proper, then obviously there's not much benefit with that.
Yeah.
But we want to combine all of those together to present Islam in the most beautiful way as possible.
Exactly.
And the most reliable way to manage that is to yourself be that role model that you want people to have.
Yeah.
Another benefit that I find there is in being physically fit, and in sports in particular, is the different skills that you can get. You're obviously playing football. It's a particular kind of sport. It's 90 minutes. You have extra time. It's a short matches that you have.
Yeah.
I'm personally a bit more into cricket, which goes on literally for days,
Yeah.
or at least for hours. And I have some experience with athletics as well, which is also a very different sport, and it gives very different skills that a person can make. One of the beneficial things I find about athletics is that there's a wide range of different events that you can partake in. You can be one of the throwers, you can jump, you can sprint, you can do long distance. So there's something for everyone in athletics in particular, but in sports in general. And I find it's extremely important for Muslims to be involved in sport in particular, especially the brothers. I think this is non-negotiable, that we aren't at least going to the gym, or at least attempting to be physically fit in that way. If you have time, and if you look into your schedule, you will have time to pursue maybe a sport. Maybe you can be a bit more competitive with it. And when you're competitive, I think that's where the focus really helps, and that really builds your character as well.
It does, yeah.
Um,
I think not only character, I mean, you mentioned the skills you gain from it. You also learn like how to manage your time better.
Yes.
Discipline, the responsibility you have upon yourself to make sure you're getting everything done as you're meant to get it done.
Yeah.
So as well as that outlet you spoke about earlier, and that chance to get away from everything, it also shows you that you need to manage when you'll do what and how you'll do them.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, time management and managing expectations and managing the energy that you have. Going back to the football example, you have 90 minutes. How are you going to use your time? How are you going to strategize the game? And how are you going to change your plans based on how things are going? It's the same for the cricket side. You're there for a few hours. You're going to predict what the other team is going to want to do. You want to see what team players you want to be in what positions. And that's another aspect of sport. Some sports are team sports, and you can also have the athletics, which is an individual sport. You have basketball, which is more of a smaller team. You have 5 people on each side. So again, there's something for everyone, and there's something that you can gain in all aspects of life when you have that sport. And when you physically exhaust yourself at the end of the day, like it's almost like you've earned your sleep. You've earned your
sense of accomplishment.
Exactly. So hopefully, and I think inshallah, this is something that is changing for the better in the Muslim community. You have people now who are at the forefront of da'wah, who are saying that we don't just need scholars. We need scholars who are able to put up a fight if they're in that position. In the past, you had scholars who were warriors. I mean, the Sahaba and the Prophet ﷺ, there wasn't a question about, are you physically fit? Or even the question, if we were to go to war tomorrow, would you be able to manage that? Like, at any point in Ramadan, it was when you had the Battle of Badr. I mean, you're fasting. It's I mean, you have Habib who doesn't take fights during Ramadan because it's exhausting. Like it does compromise your fitness to a certain extent. But it was during that time, of course, with the blessing of Allah. But it shows that these weren't people who were eating just for the sake of eating, who were just sitting around just for the crack. That they were people who had a purpose. They were on a mission, and that was what was at the forefront of their mind. And like I was saying, we have people at the forefront of the da'wah who are promoting this to a great extent, and that's definitely how things should be. Some of you who are listening might know Maulana Tariq Jamil, who does yoga himself. He does stretches, and in one of his lectures he was giving, one of his talks, he got up and he was showing the stretches that he was able to do, and it's impressive. And like, you have students who go to Islamic school, you go to madrasa to study, and you need that balance in terms of, yes, you have the knowledge, yes, you know how to apply the knowledge, but you need to be able to represent that in a way, not only from an academic point of view, but if people talk to you, that people are interested, that people respect you straight away. And when I was talking about, I kind of hinted at the self-defense aspect. We live at a time that, of course, there's Islamophobia around the place. And in Dublin, you don't want to be walking on the street alone in the middle of the night, especially as a Muslim, especially, like this goes without saying, but a Muslim girl, especially who wears the hijab. I find it very interesting. Sometimes I go back home during winter. I mean, it's Maghrib around 5 o'clock, so perhaps I'm a bit paranoid about this, but it's always better to be safe than sorry. You're looking around the place, you're making sure you're looking at the environment that you're in. You're on the Lewis, you have your back to to the door, for example, and you're kind of facing people. And I might seem like I'm a bit paranoid, but if you have someone who maybe is Islamophobic or who's just had a bad day and he's just trying to vent, and if you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, you want to be in a position that you can somewhat protect yourself in a way that's not going to put you in a worse off position.
Yeah, I agree.
And obviously sports will help that to a certain extent, but also martial arts and people like Khabib have really increased the popularity of things like jiu-jitsu and wrestling and MMA in general. But it's important to have these skills, especially as a Muslim man who is able to protect himself, his family. If you're in a group, you want to be able to be that person who people can depend on, and not be a burden on the people you're around. And some of you might have heard stories of sisters wearing niqab and someone tries to disturb her or attack her, and the sister is a black belt in jiu-jitsu. And she teaches this fella a lesson, and then he realizes that, mashallah, the sister actually was a ninja. So if you're in those kind of situations, like it also adds to the representation point of view.
Absolutely.
That these aren't people who are weak physically as well, that they're able to put up a fight, but they're also intelligent about the situations that you're going to put yourself in. When you go to these kind of practices, I'm practicing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu myself. Okay. The first thing that they teach you about being in a street, being in a situation where you're being attacked on the street, the first thing is run away. You want to be as far as possible from that situation. You don't want to engage. But if you are forced to engage, then you're taught the specific things that will help in that situation that, like I said, it won't put you in a worse off position than perhaps someone who has no idea what they're doing. And most of the time, people who do choose to put up a fight, people who do choose to attack or be Islamophobic towards a sister wearing hijab, they're cowards themselves, and they don't have any idea of how to get out of a choke. They don't know, and they have no idea what to do. Like that also comes back to the idea that if you don't know much about the basics of fighting, it might actually end up being a burden for you. It might actually act against you in that way. So, what do you have to say about the idea of self-defense and the role that people like Khabib have helped in the acceptance of these kind of sports and this kind of area?
Yeah, I think Khabib in particular not only portrays the importance of being able to defend yourself, but he also does it in a way which he portrays Islam positively. He balances the two very well, which isn't, it's not very easy to do, especially on such a big stage. And it comes back to, I think, the skills aspect of the thing. I think from sports you learn not only how to be physically active or how to gain physical skills, but a lot of sports is how you think. It's a lot of psychological. There's a lot of psychological aspects to sports, thinking outside the box. And I think when you pick up these things in sports and in self-defense, you can teach it to others. And it's things that a lot of people can pick up on pretty quickly.
Yes, definitely. Actually, on that point of teaching people, if you are at a level where, say you have a brown belt, you have a black belt in a martial arts, you're able to then teach people in the Muslim community. If you're a sister who has skilled one of the martial arts, you're able to provide that outlet for other sisters for whom it's obviously not easy to go out to a dojo to practice these things yourself, from the idea of gender segregation. But if you have a Muslim sister who's able to do that and who's knowledgeable about Islam, she can balance that. It's a safe outlet for people to learn that, to bond together, but also to learn a very important skill of how to protect yourself in a difficult situation.
Yeah.
And just on the last point I have there on Muslim representation, one of the ways that people are famous and people can influence on a high level is through sport. Like you have one of the ultimate examples, Muhammad Ali, who, as Habib puts it, he's a champion inside and outside of the ring. And once you reach a level where you're undeniable in terms of your skills, people are going to respect you, people are going to listen to you. I mean, when Habib wins one of his fights and he continues his undefeated win streak, and he says, Alhamdulillah, all of this is because of God. Like no one's, like everyone's going to listen. Like that's his time to shine. And it's a very tricky aspect of portraying Islam, especially when you're thrust into the limelight. That's why there's more of a burden on those people who feel like I'm able to represent Islam in a way that perhaps other people aren't. Or maybe there's an area that people are lacking in. Like in recent times, it was the physical appearance and the sports side of things. But if you have a point of view that you think is important for people to highlight and important for Muslims to understand, you have to reach a level where people are going to care about what you say. And being at a high level in sports is a good way to achieve that.
Yeah, and I think like when you made the point there about Khabib and how he'll win his fight and he'll say Alhamdulillah and he'll portray Islam positively in that sense, I think it comes back to what you were saying earlier in terms of being physically active and physically fit and the respect that you gain from that. And I think there's two levels to that. It's not just the level of like us in the room here, you're physically fit, I respect you, but it's also can be taken to a whole different scale where you take your physical activity and your skill and you combine it to a place where people respect you for what you achieve. And I think Khabib does that brilliantly.
Definitely. So just moving on to the question how to go about being physically fit. So what's from basic to perhaps more advanced, what are some of the areas do you think that people can work on to be physically fit, and how can they achieve that? What are the steps that they can take to reach that goal of being physically fit as quick as possible?
I think the first thing is to recognize what stage you're at of physical activity, what you're capable of and what you're not capable of at that current moment. From there you can establish the intensity of how much you want to exercise or what kind of exercise you want to do. But I think the main ways of being physically fit come down to diet and exercise, and combine that with sleep. So I think those are three main aspects, and once you take into consideration what level you're at, you can address those individually to combine them essentially to get to your end goal. I think we take each one individually, so we say exercise. Certain individuals are going to be capable of doing more than others at certain times. So if an individual is only capable of, let's say, going for walks or, just doing light exercise to start with, that's going to be more beneficial to them than doing nothing at all.
Exactly.
And I think it's important for us to recognize that within ourselves, that doing something is better than doing nothing. So I think recognize where you're at and where you want to start. Like having a goal, a plan for yourself, and doing your best to stick to that. Then when it comes to food, everyone's different in terms of calorie intake and things like that when it comes to like managing it with the level of exercise you do, how much calories you burn, how much you need to take back in, managing like your fats with your proteins and your carbohydrates. But I don't think everyone has to go into that level of detail. Again, it comes back to what stage you're at. And then obviously sleep supplements all that. Like if you're not sleeping properly, your muscles are not going to be, regenerating as quickly as they can or as they should. It's just those three things combined, I think, is what makes up physical fitness.
Yeah, I think those three things are almost like the Trinity of physical fitness and how you can unlock physical fitness in the most effective way. I think people underrate, they don't realize the impact of food and diet on being physically fit. And I think the impact is much more than the exercises that you do. You can, you can do all the exercises, you can do your walks, you can do more advanced stuff. But if your diet is very poor, even if you look jacked, even if you look physically fit and you look impressive, your insides are just dying inside.
And you'll feel the difference when you're eating healthy compared to when you're not. You'd feel that within yourself. It's not, I think physical fitness isn't just your physical appearance on the outside, but it's what you feel inside too.
Yeah. Also in terms of food, I mean, people overcomplicate things, and you can't get very complicated, and you can get into the nitty-gritty of things when you get to a certain level. But I think the basic thing is to avoid processed foods. Just from the first step that you can take, avoid processed foods, avoid chocolates.
It doesn't essentially have to be completely avoid. I mean, from time to time you can treat yourself and you can have the balance. Like, it doesn't have to be, I can't have this and I can't have this and I'm not going near this. Like, you can do it all in moderation. If you've stuck to your diet and you've done what you're meant to do and you're happy with yourself, you've done your exercise, you've gone for your walks, and the majority of the week you've been happy with how you've been eating, it's fine to have a bar of chocolate or to have a packet of crisps or to have whatever you want, but in moderation.
In moderation, yeah, exactly. I mean, like, the point is that if you're eating crisps every day, if you're eating chocolates every meal, it's not rocket science why you're still fat. I mean, like, you take those steps, you're sensible about it. Like, you're gonna see changes. You're gonna see the positive impacts of that very quickly when you start making those decisions. In terms of sleep, also something young people tend to neglect very much. We very much think that we can get a few hours of sleep and we can just conquer the world the next day, which perhaps you can at this age. But once you reach even your mid-20s, your 30s, you start feeling the impact of that, and it'll affect you for the rest of your life. So, like, be careful about that. Make sure that your sleep hygiene is on point, and make sure that you're aiming to get your 8 hours of sleep. Because obviously, not only from the physical point of view, from a psychological point of view, from a spiritual point of view, even moderation and sleep, food, being physically fit, everything in moderation, of course. And that's what the Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned so many times in his hadith. If there's an individual who says that I'm going to fast every day, or a person who says I'm going to wake up and do tahajjud every day, and the Prophet ﷺ, that isn't something that is necessarily praised, because you need to be able to take a break. You need to be able to take care of yourself with sleep and with taking a break now and again. I mean, you have the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, in which he says that your body has a right over you, your family has a right over you, so you have to be able to balance all of this. Very good, very good. Another kind of point when it comes to sports and sports as a pastime, and following sports. Perhaps this might be a bit controversial to say, but it isn't when you realize the reality of what the situation is nowadays in terms of what's available online, in terms of what's available on the billboards, on the streets. Having sports as a pastime is much safer than the haram avenues that are available at the tip of your fingers nowadays. So if you do follow the odd cricket match, if you are following the Cricket World Cup that's going on at the moment, and we'll talk about the Football World Cup that's gonna start in a few weeks, it's much better that you're involved in that you're interested in the stories of a manager, in the story of a particular footballer, Habib, for example. If you have a Muslim role model like that, it's much better to be perhaps overindulged in something like that compared to having free time to be able to indulge in something that is perhaps haram.
Yeah, I agree, definitely. I think sport and committing to sport is very time consuming, and like we were saying earlier, like it teaches you that time management aspect of things, and like you were saying, yeah, it can keep you away from even having the time to do other things. That is definitely something that you consider, not something I've actually thought of myself before, but like that is definitely a benefit of it. Takes up your time, doesn't give you time to like be thinking of things you should be thinking of. You're out, you're playing your sport, you're benefiting more than you actually think, and I've actually never taken the time to appreciate that, alhamdulillah. So yeah, I definitely agree with that point.
And again, it's like we're talking about, it's moderation. Of course, you want to push people to, if you are going to be watching football, to be moderate about it. Like, don't perhaps watch every match that's going on, the World Cup, the Champions League, the Premier League, and maybe don't watch Test cricket throughout all the 5 days. So that probably isn't the best use of your time. But again, in the extreme situation where perhaps that's all you do, and it's not affecting your salah and your spirituality, if it's going to that effect, if it's reaching that level, then that's an issue.
Yeah.
But if you're spending a lot of time on sports, it's much better than the haram alternatives. An interesting thing that my dad mentioned to me when I was getting a PlayStation 4 for myself, he said that he didn't have to think twice about it. He said that, I know that you're going to use it to play FIFA, you're going to play Need for Speed or something. But when I got a new mobile phone, he was like, be careful with how you use this, because there's the potential for sin and for that which is haram. But it's interesting, my dad, like we commonly make fun of the uncles and aunties and the advice that they give, and it's disconnected to the younger generations. But this was quite an interesting point that he said, I'm not worried about you playing football, you playing FIFA, because like, what is it going to be? Like, you're using your time, you're freshening up so that you can do your studies, so that you can go out and play your sport. And in a sense, like, there's another thing that a scholar mentioned. The TV is an angel compared to Netflix and the phones that we have. I mean, the TV was a situation that, like, you're on TV and you're watching a show, you're watching your favorite TV channel. There's one show on at the time. You can't go back, you can't go forward. If you want to watch it, you can, or you can go to a different channel. Yeah. And perhaps people are talking about an issue that you haven't thought about much. And you're forced to kind of consider different viewpoints, and you're forced to mature and be exposed to maybe a conflicting viewpoint where maybe you won't agree completely, but you can mature your understanding, and you can understand how to deal with people who have that kind of view. But now, subhanAllah, with YouTube, with Netflix and all this high-speed internet, we have what wasn't even available to the great scholars of the past.
Yeah.
It's all there, it's all free. And so much more in the beneficial, the halal, and the haram. So that perspective is extremely important for definitely us as the younger generation. It's finding nonsensical for young Muslims to be oblivious or to deny the impact of these kind of things, the real impact that these things are having on ourselves and the next generation. Yeah. SubhanAllah, whenever I think of having kids, I'm like, let me deal with myself first. I mean, like, SubhanAllah, what's going to happen next? Yeah. You have high-speed internet, you have everything that you want, and you're being bombarded left, right, and center with haram, that it's almost impossible to find the halal. Yeah. So it's important to have that perspective and to promote the halal, so that people don't have to go to the haram. Yeah. I think we'll go to the last. Yeah, I think we'll go to the last topic of today. And guys, if anyone has any questions or anything that they want to add to the discussion, you can when we're done with this. And that is the World Cup that's going to be held in Qatar this year. Obviously, there was a lot of controversy surrounding Qatar hosting the World Cup. So 2 questions. Firstly, just from a sports fan point of view, what or who should we look out for in this particular World Cup?
I'd say, in terms of what team, or what country, I think Brazil and Argentina, I would think, would be my 2 teams to look out for. Right. And in terms of players, I would say Lionel Messi. I think he's got a point to prove. He'd want to win the World Cup. It's probably his last World Cup. And probably Karim Benzema, who had a great season, obviously, with Real Madrid, and he won the Ballon d'Or. I think he'd like to carry that momentum into the World Cup with France.
Very good. And in terms of the World Cup being held in Qatar, which is an Islamic country, a Muslim country, what do you think of it as an opportunity for Muslim representation on a global stage?
I think the World Cup is probably the biggest stage in world sport. And to have the opportunity to place that in a Muslim country, I think not only presents opportunity, but puts great responsibility on the Muslims in the area. Obviously, Qatar have the responsibility of putting rules in place. They've set foundations for what's allowed and what's not allowed. And that alone is an initial representation of what the country allows and what a Muslim country permits. But I think it's not just an opportunity, but a responsibility. And I think the Muslims in the country at the time need to recognize that how they conduct themselves will be closely watched by all the different nations who are present at the time.
Yes. And just as an example of one of the hot topics for this World Cup, of course there are things on both sides that people from perhaps the Western world, they won't completely appreciate the importance a certain issue has for Muslims. And it's not as straightforward as they might think to be. And there are perhaps issues that Qatar might want to look into a bit more in terms of a Muslim representation point of view as well. I don't think we need to be very explicit about it. I think we all know what's acceptable and what's not acceptable within Islam. But from the point of view of alcohol, that's something that there's going to be restrictions in this World Cup, and there's lots of people from England in particular who have a very big drinking culture. They're very concerned about where they can be able to drink and all this, and it's an initial representation from their side to show that it's not as simple as, okay, people want to drink, you're allowed to drink.
Yeah.
No, you're being hosted in a country that have certain values, that have a different culture. So you're going to have to respect that culture to a certain extent. Yeah. And as the organizers of the World Cup mentioned, that it's not part of our culture. Drinking isn't part of our culture, so it's going to be restricted. And that's definitely a lesson for people to understand. Just to finish off with one last question then, inshallah, and then we'll open the floor to for some questions. Cristiano Ronaldo. Mm-hmm. Do you think he should retire?
I think he's nearing that stage. Like throughout his career, we've seen a continuous upward spiral in his progression, scoring goals year on year on year. I think last year we saw the first kind of dip in his form, and this year definitely more so, where he's struggling to even get in the Manchester United team. He just looks a frustrated figure, someone who can't achieve what he normally would be used to. I don't think he should retire yet, perhaps downgrade to a worse league for the moment, but I think he's definitely nearing that stage. It's
a young man's sport, isn't it, football?
It is, yeah.
Especially the extent to which players play. I mean, I just realised a few years ago that you have all the leagues happening at the same time. You have the Champions League and the Premier League on at the same time. Mm-hmm. And that's why I got a bit more appreciation and respect for the amount that these players get for their salaries. Any questions from your guys' side? Yes?
So, during your long career of sporting around, I guess, have you ever had to face or deal with any kind of bigotry or hatred or Islamophobia of any sort?
I don't know if it's directly Islamophobia, but definitely racism. And it's not an easy thing to deal with, in that you don't always have the support you think you might have with how racism in particular and anti-racism is portrayed in the media. You'd expect to have the support of people, you'd expect people to try to help you and to play it down, but it's quite often ignored and pushed aside. Like quite recently, only last year, I had a case of someone being like clearly racist to me. Heard by my teammates, heard by the other team. So I've filed that complaint as such to the referee, like an incident report. And they claimed to be going through the formal process. I had someone from my team who'd back me up as such, who handed himself in as a witness. We had to write statements and everything. And in the end, it was just, there's not enough evidence. So it's something I've had to face numerous times, and while I expected that this time, with anti-racism being so prominent, that it might be handled a bit better, it just doesn't really seem to be something that's addressed to the degree that it should.
How do you think Ireland compares to, say, the UK in terms of racism and Islamophobia?
I think the UK is slightly more diverse than Ireland, perhaps a bit more accepting than Ireland is. If I had, obviously I don't have any facts or figures, statistics to back it up, but judging by what I would think based on my small enough knowledge, I would think the UK is more accepting of different backgrounds than Ireland is.
Have you been to the UK?
I've been to the UK a few times, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So you probably have a bit more experience than I have. I personally thought that the diversity and to an extent there seems to be a harsh divide between the Muslim areas and perhaps the non-Muslim areas. I think that definitely, in whatever case, it's not good. From a Muslim representation point of view, that if you're not in society, if you don't have a voice in society, like no one's going to give you a voice until you want to get that for yourself. And like racism and Islamophobia is a question that Muslims get a lot, and it's also a point to consider that it depends on how you deal with it and what you make out of it. I mean, being a Muslim and Islamophobia, it's an issue today to a certain extent. It was an issue in the past. People said the Prophet ﷺ was not a prophet, he was a magician, he was a liar who knew he was the Prophet. So it's like to assume that Islamophobia is shouldn't happen to you is naive to think. But it's also, you take that formal approach like you have. You stand up for yourself, you file that complaint, but you don't let that put you on the back foot and to kind of worry and be sad about that. So I think it's important to have that balance and that perspective, for sure.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yeah, actually, I have a question. So, improving and maintaining your physical fitness, has that helped you in improving and maintaining your other aspects of life? Like, for example, your spiritual fitness, your mental fitness, doing well in college and also being a good Muslim?
Yeah, I think it definitely does. See, one thing I haven't really taken the time to appreciate since I've been playing sports since I'm so young is the benefit that it gives me in terms of not only physical fitness, but that outlet that we spoke about and the chance to put more time and effort and focus into your time management and how you'll balance other things. I think it gives the sense of achievement and kind of that boost, like you know yourself. I have started my day off right. I've gone to the gym, I've worked out. Like you're in this disciplined, focused state of mind. And that gives you, that determination to focus on other things to a higher degree than if I weren't physically active. So it definitely does.
Good. Any other questions?
Yeah, there's a question I was going to ask, but he basically asked the same question, but there were a few others, which is, would you say there's a relationship or correlation between having an ego and being a high performer? Not implying that all high performers have an ego, but how would you say having a status kind of, or being in a position where you know that you're an elite to an extent, or that you're the people that are around you, would you say there's a correlation between that and having an ego, and how would you keep the ego in check?
Really getting into the philosophy of things.
Yeah.
No, on a surface level. On a surface level.
I don't think there has to be a correlation. I don't think there is a correlation. I think it's just that the majority of people who aren't humble as such, when they're put in that position, they're not grateful for what they have. That can, enable and, encourage the formation of an ego. But there are examples, like we made reference to Sadio Mane, who is the furthest thing from it. He's the most humble sports person that there is. And he, again, when it comes back to Muslim representation, does an excellent job. He's built hospitals in his hometown. He funds, he gives donations to families in his hometown. Even when he scores a goal, for example, he'll do sujood. There are people who are humble and recognize how they got to where they got to. So I don't think your status in terms of being an elite sports person directly correlates to having an ego.
Well, if there's a correlation, that was another question. Is there a correlation between that and mental resilience and other aspects of life? Even if you're going through a distress, let's say, anything in life, would you say there's a correlation between mental resilience and just even going to the gym on a consistent basis? Yeah,
definitely. Again, that's back to your focus, your determination, and I think also we spoke with the managers earlier and their mentality, their perspective, their outlook on life. And I think that physical activity gives you that different perspective that builds that mental resilience. Even if you're talking about in terms of going to the gym, in the gym you're going to face struggles. You're not going to be able to always do what you're trying to do. You're not always going to be, up for going to the gym. But the discipline, the putting yourself in the situation, the going in and doing the exercise, going for the walk, going for the run, doing things that will build your mental toughness will stand to you in other aspects of life. And that's definitely something that physical activity gives you.
Thank you. Any other questions? No, I think we'll leave it there for today then, inshallah. Just a reminder for everyone regarding our upcoming event on Friday. So on Friday we have an international guest speaker, Adnan Rashid, who is going to be with us. He's going to give the first khutbah on Friday at 12:15, inshallah. So we're going to have 2 khutbahs just for this Friday. The second one will be at 1:10. And he'll give a lecture at 6 o'clock in TBSI, in the main lecture theatre in TBSI. That'll be at 6 p.m. It'll be on the topic of the impact of Islamic civilization on the West. And that'll be followed by questions and answers. So do join us for that event, inshallah. And the first of many events, inshallah, that we'll have international guest speakers.